We're going to start part 9 of the 1951 Ford F1 rebuild series, and you might note there's a cab on the truck. So we got the cab out of the driveway. It's right up there on that little rack, a roller, and we put it onto the frame. Basically the cab was sitting right outside that garage door facing this way, so we lifted the cab up, pulled it out of the way that way, rolled the frame out, pushed the cab back over, set it down. Then we went ahead and took it out into the street, did a multi-point turn, and rolled it back into the garage. And we rolled it in backwards, back in first. Reason is, as we've discussed in a previous video, next course of action is to install the motor, and so I need this room in the driveway out here to help me install the motor. So here's where the motor goes, and that'll be the next thing to do. First we've got to put the motor and transmission together, put the plate between them, probably go ahead and put the starter on it while we got it out before we stick it in, and then we're going to slide it in, start mocking up motor mounts, mocking up transmission mounts, things like that. And not great light. Hang on, let me make the light better, and then we'll be able to see this. I'll show you something. So here's what I wanted to show you. The light's not a ton better, but here's the clutch pedal. Clutch pedal goes up into the cab, as it should. However, the brake pedal, see if we can get it where you can see. You can't see too well, but brake pedal does not go up into the cab. And so this just is that issue we were a little bit concerned about before, that hose out of the way. A little concerned with before about the location of the master cylinder being slightly shifted toward the passenger side. So if we ever got this through, the actual bar, this actual bar of the pedal would clear, but I'm quite sure that the plate that goes in this slot's not going to be aligned correctly. So we'll figure it out. Not sure exactly what course of action we'll take, but we'll take some course. We may actually just enlarge this hole somewhat and then cut us a new plate to go in there to fill in between the two pedals. Probably the easiest thing. It's certainly not so far over it'll be a problem. I was going to reuse the throttle system, which is right here. Here's the throttle linkage. So we'll see about it. I think we'll still have enough room, no matter, it's not over a ridiculous amount, it's just over a fairly small amount. So anyway, no big deal. That goes back to the whole master cylinder clutch brake pedal installation that we covered in the last section. So there she sits, ready to put the motor in. So let's go on and get that done. I guess I should mention I'm going to excerpt some video that my wife was kind enough to take on her phone of us messing with the truck here, trying to get the cab on, so and get it turned around. I'll stick that in here and then we'll move on.
Mama and Gracie got this. I'm blocking traffic with Jenny. Gracie protecting Daddy and Pinky while they do a 20-point turn of the truck. Now they're gonna back it back into the garage, I think. Yep, she rolling.
All right, well, we're back at this motor install, because of my excited nature, I didn't stop and get better video in the meantime during the process. But we're in there now. I've got help today from Gingerbread Man Moto YouTube channel. Go check him out, and my brother Smokey. So we managed to get the engine and transmission assembled. You've seen in earlier videos transmission sitting over on a cart, and then the engine, got it all assembled into one section. The next thing we did was we took out the transmission tunnel, and you can see there the original shifter location was this rear shifter location on this T56. Was where it was at. It doesn't matter, but we're definitely going to be moving forward to the forward shifter location, which is not a problem. We've currently got a jack under, if I can get you a view here, under the back end of the transmission, and we've been working now. Basically the frame is level. We've got ourselves up on these roll arounds so that we didn't have to always move the motor. We could move the truck some. And so we're sitting there right now. Our firewall clearance is pretty decent. It's the nearest point. The other one's further out because that heads further forward. And we've got enough room there, comfortable. One thing about these trucks, I mean, you'll notice that the cab's cut in pretty deep right there. So it doesn't look like we're going to have to do any relieving for the bell housing, which I kind of thought we might at first, but turns out that's not necessary. And then here on the front, I'll show you. This is where the radiator mounts. Right now, I think we've got enough room to put the radiator in its stock location, which is here. You also have the option of moving it forward to this location. Either one of them looks like it'll work fine. If we go to this one, we'll probably have to put the fans on the outside of the radiator, and that's okay too. So we're in there. Now to start leveling everything, centering everything up. Let me teach you a lesson I just learned today. This 1997 Ford Thunderbird IRS, the pinion gear is not center line of the truck. Now, having said that, the IRS is mounted center line of the frame, but this is not center line. It's off by about 9/16 toward the passenger side off center. So whenever we install the motor and trans, we're going to install the motor 9/16 off center line, which, as it turns out, will be an okay thing because we're already a little concerned about managing steering. Here's your steer connection on the rack and pinion, and then the column originally came out of the hole where the brake and the clutch pedals were. So by moving this another 9/16 over, which we've not really centered this side yet, but the further we shift it that way, it's the less grief we're going to get over the steering linkage. So that's it for this segment. We'll continue when we do something next. The next thing we've got to do is start looking at final placement of the motor, make sure we're happy with where it is, and then we can start babbing on our motor mounts, which are right down there. Right now they're just hanging on there. We're going to have to get them set the right way, and then once that's done, then we'll also have our transmission cross member to go. One thing about the transmission cross member already is that transmission mount position, and if you remember the last video, the brake power booster and master cylinder assembly interfere with each other pretty well. So we're going to have to definitely shape that cross member so that we're on the back side of that no, that's not true. We're going to have to make it so that we can work around the power booster and master cylinder, but certainly going to have to move it toward the rear of the vehicle and then angle the cross member back toward the front of the vehicle. So it'll be a little half moon, odd shaped little monster, but we'll get it. Anyway, that's it for now. We'll get back to you. Well, we're finally back to this thing, holidays and the like. You can probably see a little better than earlier, where the brake pedal does not clear this hole. Well, just for info, we've got the transmission motor sitting right there, hanging. Got the butt end of it sitting on the frame cross member. And we're doing hopefully our final fit up for the motor mounts. But while I've got it out, I'm going to go ahead and resolve this issue here. If you look back in a prior video, the part 8 video, you'll see that this hole where the pedal screws in lined up about halfway, midway of the frame. And now you see that we're over a good 1.5 inches, maybe 2 inches. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to heat this thing with a rosebud, hopefully, and get it to bend. Now we don't want to bend it up here on this section. We want to bend it down here on this lower section. That way your pedal still moves true up and down. And so we're going to go right behind this knuckle, and we're going to heat it with a rosebud, and then we're going to put a pair of vice grips on it here, and we're just going to turn it in until this little wonder lands about midways of the frame. And then we're going to measure the distance between these two pedals, and so we'll replicate that on this side to maintain the distance between the center line of the pedal mount. So let's see what we can do. I'll get back with you. Well, there's one. Probably still see it's still glowing. Pretty much center line of the frame. And measure-wise, there should be 6.5 inches between the center of this pedal mount and the center of this pedal mount. So we're going to give this thing a bend now and see if we can get it in line. It's a pretty significant bend, but pedal still functions. I think we're going to be just fine with it. We'll see. All right, let me bend the other one. I think we're good. Apologize for the shakiness here. I think we're good. Here's the brake. Goes up into the cab. Here's the clutch pedal. Goes up into the cab. It rests center line, pretty close center line of the frame. The distance between this one and this one, when they're even on a straight line like that, about 6.5 inches, center a hole to center a hole on the pedal mount. So we're good. It's a little, comes out, bends around, but that's okay. I don't think it's going to cause us any grief at all, as long as I didn't over harden the metal or something silly like that. But just let it cool naturally, so hopefully we'll be good. So now it's time to move on to some motor mounts. Hello again, YouTube. Just a little update segment here. The motor mounts are in intact. There's one here, 2 tacks there. There's a couple tacks on the bottom. They're heavy tacks. Don't want this thing to move when I take out the motor to do the final weld up, which is going to be a while. A few other things I want to do first. These things are they're mounted to the back of the cross member. I think most often they mount them to the cross member. With this truck and the clearances, it's not going to work out, so we're mounting them to the back of the cross member. In order to do that, we had to heat them, put a little zig in them. One thing that's challenging on these is getting this bush section to line up with the holes, various angles and tilts. And so whenever we take this apart, we're actually going to, when we take the motor out, we're going to remove the mount off of the motor and then just leave this entire section with the bushing in there. Just seems like the right way. I don't know. One thing you'll notice, this cross member is fairly low. When I say low, I mean this way. It's not kicked up this way. And that's because we got to clearance the steering box and where the steering arm's going to come in here. On this side, we were able to mount here on the angular portion of the cross member. You see again, this wire out of the way. You'll see that we've got a good tack in it there. There's some, almost a stitch actually, and then there's some tacks on the bottom and side. So I want to make sure whenever I do pull the motor out that this thing will stay, these things will not move around, otherwise the motor won't go back in the way it came out. So we're pretty happy with that. The transmission's still sitting on the cross member. Excuse me, the transmission is still sitting on a jack. I need to build the cross member. That's going to come next. And then I'm going to fire this thing. It hadn't run in a year and a half or so. I turned it over by hand, and it's all free, as it should be. I oiled the pistons before I put it away. So I'm ready to start that. It's Crossmember, built and put in, and then start that. Let's look at the Crossmember and the requirements for it. I guess one thing I'll note real quick, my intent is to put angular gussets from this Crossmember up to that bracket. So we'll put gussets in between there just to, you know, enforce the rigidity of that mount. Motor mount's key point. So let's go look at this transmission Crossmember situation. You know, forgive the lighting and the poor view from under here, but here's where the transmission mount goes on this T56. And if you look on the opposite side, you'll probably quickly realize there's the master cylinder for the brakes, and very much in line. The transmission is down below the frame rail. Here's the frame rail. So we've got to come out, we've got to go up. But with it being the way it is on the master cylinder on the other side, that's not going to work out very well. So my best guess at this point is we're going to need to come out, and we're going to need to angle up and over and target landing on the frame behind the master cylinder. So it's going to be a little tricky. Right now my inclination is to use 2x2 tubing. I don't have any 2x2 tubing of adequate wall thickness. Got some 1/8 inch plates. I think I'm going to make it out of that. Actually, it's a little bigger than 1/8 inch. I think it's 176 thousandths, 175 thousandths what I measured. But so we're gonna look at that. I think that's actually 3/16 plate. I'm not sure. So we're going to fabricate some 2x2 tube out of that. I've got some 2x2 tube, but it's like 1/16 wall. Way too light, I think, for what we want to do. And so that's going to be our next step. And then we want to fire this motor. We're going to cover that in the next video. This one's getting too long now. Talk to you later. Bye.